Greetings, my little maggots. My name is Rot, and welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, then hi, hello, nice to have you. Happy Gay Month! I wish every gay or otherwise LGBT person in my audience a wonderful Pride Month. Amazing segue time before we get into today's video. I have started a Ko-Fi. You can either make a one-time donation of your choosing, or if you'd like access to work-in-progress sketches, a 10% off discount on commissions, and also for me to feature and say your name at the end of my videos, then you can become a member. Obviously, no pressure to support me or donate if you can't or don't want to, but if you can, I'd really appreciate it. I have a surgery and also therapy bills coming up pretty soon that I'll need to pay for, so every donation and even just support by watching my videos and being here helps. The link to my Ko-Fi will be in the description, so follow the link below if you want to support me extra. Back to the topic of today's video, as you all voted for on the last poll, this video will be about my experiences accepting my sexuality, romanticism, and gender. But, mostly this video will just be about my romanticism, because that was the most difficult and genuinely confusing thing for me to accept. So if that sounds like an interesting story time to you guys, then strap in and buckle up and let's begin. So for all of you that don't know, or if you're just new to my channel, I'm a bisexual, polyamorous, aromantic, non-binary person. And yes, I have brownish red hair and pronouns. All memes aside, I personally identify with quite a few labels, and I want to explain how I came to each conclusion over time. Starting with my bisexuality, I've pretty much known that I was bisexual since I was a really small child. No joke, I think I figured out when I was like 5 or 6. The Awakening, if you will, was an old school Batman movie that my parents had, and after seeing it, my 5-year-old ass was pretty much head over heels for the Uma Thurman, Poison Ivy. From what I've heard, a lot of bi and pan people tend to go through either a comphet or gay questioning period, but that never really happened for me. Though my first attraction was women, and I do prefer women or femme-presenting people all the way up to current day, I knew pretty early on that I liked men too. Luckily, similar to myself, my mom is also bisexual, so when I went to her as a slightly older kid, probably 9 or 10, and kind of asked her if there was such a thing as liking both, she was like, yeah, well, and explained what bisexuality was. And ever since that time, I've been a proud bisexual. Now, I've had people ask me in the past why I don't use the term pansexual instead, as I do like all genders, including people outside of the binary or who are gender non-conforming. You see, as mentioned before, I have a strong femme preference and do consider gender quite a bit when it comes to attraction, more than I think that a pansexual would, so that's just kind of the reason why. I also just kind of prefer the bi label, maybe because I've identified with it for almost a decade at this point. So bisexuality aside, let's talk about how I figured out I was polyamorous now. First of all, I kind of want to take this moment to explain polyamory because many people I've met in the past completely misunderstand what it is, assume it's equivalent to cheating or something, or just associate it with polygamy or polyandry, which is not at all accurate. So for those of you uninitiated or unaware, polyamory is the practice of engaging in multiple romantic and/or sexual relationships at once, but with the consent of everyone involved. Unlike an open relationship, which typically refers to a couple in which each person consensually engages intimately with others outside of their relationship, polyamory is instead more comparable to having multiple people who all engage with one another under the same roof. Polygamy, or polyandry on the other hand, is instead the practice of a man or a woman having multiple wives or husbands that don't engage with each other. For example, in a polygamous household, a man might have 4 wives that are involved with him only and engage with him only, whereas in a polyamorous household, a man and his 4 girlfriends are all involved with each other and engage with each other. So, as a polyamorous person also open to open relationships, I do not want 2 different partners that are only interested or involved with me and not with each other, but I instead desire relationships with 2 or more people at the same time, where we're all emotionally involved. Hope that clears things up for some people who were confused on the difference or just didn't know. So how did I figure out that I felt this way? Well, I don't really know. Unlike my bisexual awakening, there was never really a specific moment where it just clicked that I preferred the idea of relationships with multiple partners. I just sorta knew at some point. I remember feeling this way all the way back since early junior high and 6th grade, but I think that I only started identifying as poly openly near the latter half of my 8th grade year. It was never really hard for me to grasp, and just like how my mom is bisexual, she's also poly, so I had access to a support system that understood how I felt and could explain things to me easily. So I'm comfortably a bi-poly person? That's great! I can feel happy in my own skin and pursue relationships with others that feel the same way. Oh, and a new challenger has appeared to ruin the simplicity for me! This is where the video is going to slip into a bit more of a story time and a recounting of personal experiences, and this realization has so far been the one that I've struggled the most with in accepting my identity. And this realization, baby grills, is that I am a romance-repulsed. A romantic. Now, ever since I was a young kid, I always knew that something was like a little bit different about me in the romance department. I watched Barbie movies and Disney princess films a lot, and even though I liked them and thought that they were neat, I could never really fathom the way that romance was presented and described. Because of that media and societal expectations in general for romance, though, I struggled with what I and others like to call Compallo. Let me explain. The term Compallo is a variation on the term comphet or compulsory heterosexuality. From what I understand, comphet is specifically a term that many lesbians use to describe disregarding their own attraction to other women in favor of pursuing relationships with men. The reason generally has to do with feeling that they have to fall into societal gender role norms. Even though it's mostly a lesbian term, though, I also think that it could be used to describe gay masc people that go through a really similar I must be sexually attracted to the opposite sex because society tells me so conflict. So, the term Compallo is a play on the terms comphet and alloromantic, and is short for compulsory alloromanticism. For those of you unaware, an alloromantic person is someone who experiences romantic attraction to other people and is not on the aromantic spectrum. So when I say I experienced Compallo, I basically mean that I grew up feeling like I needed to be romantically attracted to other people. I thought that my role was essentially just to experience the kind of romantic attraction that you see described everywhere in the media, and all the movies that I watched growing up where the woman's goal was to fall in love with the man of her dreams and get married just made it worse. As an extra tidbit, there was this video that Jaden Animations put out a while back where she explained that she was aroace. In that video, she said that there was this point where she just picked someone random in her class and decided that she had a crush on them because, like, well, she thought that she was just supposed to because that's what other people implied to be the norm. And like, oh my god, that part of that video really struck me, because I have an incredibly similar experience. When I was in 4th grade, I just kind of decided that I liked this random boy I didn't know because my friends said that I needed to have a crush. I mean, it didn't take long for me to realize that, yeah, I wasn't interested in him, but that experience just lives rent-free in my brain. I really specifically remember staring at him while he was playing basketball in the gym during PE class and just squinting my eyes. It was like I thought that if I strained hard enough, I'd suddenly see him flip his hair in slow motion and smooth jazz would start playing in the background and he'd have hearts floating around him and I'd just be in love or something. Needless to say, I was a really weird kid. For many years of my young life, I actually never had to confront that complex, all the way up until I started dating a particular partner in middle school. You see, over the years, I've been in a few relationships, but only 2 of them have ever been what I would describe as serious, and both of those times were kinda terrible! I want to save most of the discussion of the latter one for a video that I'm currently working on and plan to release later when I can just, handle getting through the script and, working through some of that, but I'll be kind of vague and brief where I can about the middle school one out of respect for the person involved. And I'm only discussing it because it is incredibly relevant to the confrontation of my Compallo complex. So, middle school, 7th grade. About a year prior, I had met this person that I called Sam in my video about my toxic ex-friend. So I will continue to call them Sam for this video. Over the summer of 2017, between 6th and 7th grade, we began dating and were together all the way up until I think April of 2018, maybe May, almost an entire year. And, well, that relationship taught me a lot about my true feelings of romance. In retrospect, though. At the beginning, everything was cool and great, but as time went on and things became more serious on Sam's end, I went from feeling comfortable to feeling incredibly uncomfortable and trapped. If I remember correctly, the beginning of that shift was there was this turning point a couple months in that Sam said that they loved me, and from that point on used the L word excessively. I vaguely remember them also saying that they wanted to get married, though my autistic ass can't tell whether or not they were being genuine about that or not. It was clear to me that they were experiencing romantic feelings. They clung to me, always wanted to hold my hand, wouldn't leave my side, told me that they loved me over and over again, and the more that they said things like that was the more that I was completely and utterly repulsed. During that whole experience, I didn't really understand why I felt that way while everything was going on, but when I finally ended things in April, I started to consider that I was perhaps aromantic. After thinking about it for a while, I initially, back in the day, decided that I was on the aro spectrum, but wasn't fully aromantic. You see, I have this really bad habit of getting involved with people that I'm not interested in being involved with if they're nice to me, or if I have a relationship with them prior. I've not been formally diagnosed yet, I really need to go to therapy, but I'm pretty sure that I have BPD, or borderline personality disorder. I have almost every symptom. And the sudden attachment that I can feel for people is, well, intense and uncontrollable at times. Before I started to kind of confront some of this stuff more recently, when someone I already liked approached me and expressed an interest, I would fling myself at them in the past and devote myself to them, only to discover later that I didn't, feel that attraction to them as much as I initially thought. This was the case for Sam at that time, but I didn't really figure out that that was why I felt like I did until incredibly recently. Like, less than a year ago recently. I liked them as a friend for a while, and when they asked me to be their joy friend, my yes was instant because I already liked them as a friend. I fixated on them for a while and just kind of molded myself into the person that they indicated to me that they wanted me to be. But I didn't feel the way that they did, nor did I feel the way that they wanted me to feel. I wasn't the person that they wanted me to be either, and that's why things eventually fell apart. Back at that point, though, I went through this period of despising Sam, or in BPD terms, splitting on them and imagining them in my head as some evil person who had wanted to hurt me. And so, at this point, I figured that I wasn't entirely aro because, well, even though I found Sam's romantic advances repulsive, I figured that this repulsion came less from the romance and more from the fact that it was them who had been making the romantic advances. The age-old internalized question of, well, maybe I just didn't like this person. I definitely totally must like other people, and it was just this person that I didn't feel that way about. However, even though I didn't really think I was fully aromantic at the time, I figured that I was somewhere on the spectrum, and for many years after that, I identified as a romance-positive aromantic, and, if asked, would explain that I was completely comfortable with the concept of being romantically involved with someone. Jump scare, I was not! Again, I want to leave most of this story for a later video because it's a little bit more serious and a bit harder for me to talk about because it happened less than a year ago. However, last year, I again entered a relationship with someone that I was not physically, mentally, or romantically attracted to because they were one of my friends for a long time prior to asking me. They were also what I would call a favorite person at one point, and that fact clouded my judgment a lot. I entered the relationship because I wanted to keep them happy and didn't want to let them down and to tell them that I wasn't interested, and because I wanted someone to love me and to be there for me. I was going through an incredibly dark and vulnerable point in my life at that time and made poor, stupid, and hurtful decisions because of that fact. Now, unlike the middle school relationship, this relationship was online and long distance, but only about a month after we started dating, she began saying things like how she wanted to move to my state and live with me, and how they basically wanted to spend the rest of their life with me. Again, just like with Sam, hearing this stuff made my stomach roil. It made me want to run, it made me want to escape, it even made me kind of want to die a little bit, just a little bit, in Minecraft. However, I played along with it, and even though I was, less enthusiastic about it than she ever was, I wearily returned to the affections until I realized I couldn't do it anymore last October. That was when I realized, yep, no, I am completely a romance-repulsed aromantic. Even when I imagined having romantic relationships with people outside of her, I would scrunch my nose and feel disgusted. The thought of marrying them, or even anyone else, but especially them, and having them move in with me was so paranoia and nausea-inducing that I broke things off and explained to them very gently that I wasn't romance positive, but that, it turns out that I was instead disgusted by it. The rest of the story after that is irrelevant to the romanticism, but yeah. That was the moment that the realization fully hit me that I was truly on the farthest side of the aro spectrum possible, It's something that I've only really come to terms with in the last few months, and honestly that fact is kinda hard to accept. My life would be so much easier if I could be allo, honestly. I could have relationships with people and not have to worry about them getting too serious. I could fall in love and have that same sort of magical cinematic experience that was promised to me as a small child. But nah, that just isn't in the cards for me. That combined with me being poly is also quite difficult because I know that many poly people are also very romantic. However, my aromanticism doesn't really stop me from desiring connections or relationships. It's a bit confusing, I know, even to myself to a degree, but I know that I still desire an intimate connection with others. I just simply see people as kind of one-night stands, or if I want a relationship with them, I see them more as a close friend that I'm intimate with rather than someone that I'm in love with, if that makes sense. I'm still kind of figuring things out myself, if you couldn't tell. Moving on from the aromanticism, my latest realization about my identity was that I am not a woman. Hi, I am non-binary. I talked about this quite a bit in my previous video, but as a recap, I'm a femme, non-binary person, and my pronouns are they, them. My gender, just like my romanticism, has so far been relatively confusing. I feel many different ways, and the way that I think about myself can switch back and forth in like a day or two. Gender is whack, I don't know, man. So until I, pin down, exactly how I feel, which may or may not ever happen, I am most comfortable being a cryptid they, them. And, well, that's the full story about how I discovered that I was a bisexual, polyamorous, aromantic, mentally ill, autistic NB. No, I did not stutter. I have 95 mental illnesses, and every time you guys criticize me, I gain 5 more. All jokes aside, thank you all for watching, and I hope this video was interesting and not, completely boring. If any of y'all have a coming out experience or just kind of a moment of realization that you are LGBT, or maybe you're even questioning and you'd like to share, and you're comfortable doing so, then feel free to do so in the comments. This is a safe space for everyone. You're all accepted here. With all of that out of the way, feel free to rate or subscribe if you feel inclined to do so. If you're interested in seeing more of my artwork, both safer work or not safer work if you're 18 or older, feel free to follow the link down below to my card, where you can find all the links to all of my socials. And remember, the link to my Ko-Fi is in the description. If you want some extra perks, you can support me on there as well. Have a nice rest of your day, everyone, and I will now bid you all adieu.